Friends, Namaste and welcome to our Sunday edition of Words of Wisdom, Gyan Ganga on our Virat Hindustan Sangam social media channels, which we beam on Saturdays and Sundays. Today we have a very important discussion, and as usual we have Dr. Subramanian Swamy and our guest, Major General Bakshi. And today's program we are going to be talking about Biden-Putin summit, implications for India-China relations. This is the topic of discussion for today, and Dr. Swamy will be having this discussion with General Bakshi, who, as you all know, is a very popular figure in our social media as well as in the electronic media. He is a retired Indian Army officer. He is from Jammu and Kashmir Rifles. He was awarded the Vishisht Seva Medal for commanding a battalion in the Kargil War. Later, he was awarded the Sena Medal for distinguished service in commanding a battalion during the counter-insurgency drives. He has held and led numerous battles in Jammu and Kashmir and other areas. He has authored numerous books, just to name some: Bose, an Indian Samurai, Netaji and the INA, a military assessment, बोस या गांधी, किसने दिलवाई भारत को आजादी, सरस्वती सभ्यता, प्राचीन भारतीय इतिहास में एक महत्वपूर्ण परिवर्तन, Freedom as an Eagle, poem from an outpost. These are some of the publications. He and Dr. Swamy will also tell us about his latest book, which is to be published. And he has been a writer, writing in numerous publications, and his views have been sought after by various media channels. Every day in the evenings, you see him on some TV channel or the other. So with this opening remarks, I welcome you all to our program. I have to thank my co-host, Professor Arvind Chaturvedi from Delhi, and Ramesh Swamy for hosting the program together on Saturdays and Sundays. And I also have to thank our technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Tejas Navalgul, Gadgi Rakesh, Ishwar Iyer, Swaminathan, and Vishal Mehta. So with this, it is over to our patron president, founder of Virat Hindustan Sangam, Dr. Subramanian Swamy, for his initial remarks and to start the discussion on today's important topic. Over to Dr. Swamy.
Thank you, Jagdish. It gives me great pleasure to introduce in this particular program General G.D. Bakshi, who, don't be misled by his general title. He has been a scholar, written books, he has researched into great depths, he has brought out secrets about the INA and its contribution, which have been hidden in files and not been brought to the notice of the public. He is a fearless man. He speaks very eloquently. As Jagdish said, he is extremely popular both in the social media and the TV media. So, and everybody knows him in the whole country. And I discovered recently that he was writing a book on the most complicated topic, which I'm sure that it will be a bestseller not only in India, but also in the world over, and particularly in the United States. And in some ways, it might be even popular in China, because the conclusions are such that there will be at least a big section, important section of China, which will think that this man has got it right now. But the book is not a true description of what happened about the coronavirus coming out and spreading all over the world. It's what General Bakshi has been doing, which is called contingency planning in our ordinary language, but it's gaming, called gaming in the military language, which is, I say, this could be a possibility. And he has fitted so many facts with it that I think could be no other possibility, but then we leave it to him. This book, I had got an advance copy for a review, and it's called the Thunder Dragon, and the COVID Strike by General G.D. Bakshi. And he's also a PhD, by the way. He's been a professor too in the military colleges. So I won't take up much more time. I will give him first a free hand. He can speak up to 30 minutes. And then we will have a discussion amongst ourselves, and then also take questions if they are screened on, and Jagdish makes a note of it. So over to you, General Bakshi. Thank you very much for coming on this program.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving me the honor of having me on your program. Apropos the book that you mentioned, sir, this is in the Tom Clancy tradition of scenario generation exercise. We have taken a look at how COVID could have been employed as a weapon for biological warfare by China, and if it has been so done, how this could have been stage managed, how it could have actually occurred after a deep research into the thinking in the Chinese military, the Chinese military commission, the PLA, the Air Force, PLA, Air Force and Navy. We've gone into that and come up with this scenario generation exercise. Quite obviously, we had to give it that fictional cover, as you rightly mentioned, so that I can't be sued. But yet the truth is very important and it concerns us all. We have lost some 174 million people have been infected. 4 million people are dead globally. $2 trillion lost to the global economy. Worse than hit than the Great Depression. In India itself, we've had 3 crore people infected. Over 3.5 lakhs are dead. This is the highest casualty we have suffered since our independence in any one kind of a conflict scenario. Therefore, we have to deter China. We have to stop China from doing more of the same. Otherwise, we are entering a very dangerous era which could destroy our economy. Already, our economy has taken a series of very bad hits because of COVID, and we dealt with the first wave. The second wave is coming. If we don't deter China, the third wave, fourth wave, fifth, 10th wave could come. New viruses could be launched against us, and that is unacceptable. The world has to get together to put a halt to this. That's what this book is about. So I would request all thinking people all over the globe to kindly read this, so that we will now have to seriously put pressure on China, so that China can be named and shamed, China can be deterred from such irresponsible behavior. Coming to the topic of the day, Dr. Henry Kissinger had said it should be settled maxim of United States foreign policy never to take on more than one major Asian power at a time. What he was talking of was major powers like Russia, he called it an Asian power, China, Japan, India. He said if we have to take on an Asian power, we should do it one at a time. This was his advice to American decision makers. And we must not forget that it was Henry Kissinger who, under Nixon, was the architect of the tilt towards China, the outreach towards China. And that worked very well to balance the military power of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union in the Nixonian era was a military colossus. And the people had not really realized that it was actually weak because it lacked a strong economic base. The economic base was highly dependent upon the price of oil, and the Americans very systematically went to create an oil glut. After the oil shock of 73, they created an oil glut which torpedoed the Soviet economy. And in 1990, it collapsed without a single shot being fired, without a single shot being fired by what the Chinese called non-contact warfare. Without a kinetic action, the Soviet Union, the colossus, mighty colossus of the Soviet Union was destroyed. Russia has reinvented itself. It is again coming up as a military power, but its economic weakness remains. Donald Trump had been smart enough to realize this, and he was trying an outreach towards Russia while trying to designate China as the main enemy, as the main challenger, and dealing with it in a very energetic fashion. But the deep state in the United States, every nation has a deep state, so has the United States a deep state. It is the CIA, FBI, DSA, and national security complex. They were very allergic to anything to do with Russia, any outreach to Russia, and they resisted it very strong. And unfortunately, I think the Biden administration came with a thing to undo everything that Trump had done. But they are coming around to the conclusion that I think they will have to have a bipartisan consensus as far as the policy towards China is concerned. You see, China has gone very systematically. They studied the rise and fall of Germany, Nazi Germany. And they found that Nazi Germany had collapsed militarily because it had not created an economic base first. It had straight away gone in for militarization and started the war prematurely. Had it built an economic base first and then fought the war, maybe the results would have been different. So they learned their lesson, and you find the Chinese have a $12.5 trillion economy today to our $2.5 trillion. $12.5 trillion economy. They have deep pockets. They can buy people. Very interestingly, Dr. Swamy, in February this year, a Chinese defector, Dong, called Dong, he has crossed over. He was a member of the State Security Bureau. That is the Chinese combination of the CIA and the FBI that deals with external and internal security and clandestine operation. He was a counter intelligence guy, very high up. He was one of the vice ministers. He had reached that level. He was very close to Xi Jinping. He, along with his daughter, have defected to the United States, and they were taken charge of. They came via Hong Kong. They have been taken charge of by the Defense Intelligence Agency. And some of the revelations that are tumbling out is come with whole terabytes of computer data. You see, on what the Chinese are doing inside the United States. How many people have been purchased in the United States is amazing. And that is what the coming of this man has caused a serious rethink in the Biden administration. And now they are getting tough with China. They have also started getting tough with China. The bipartisan consensus that we were not seeing earlier on this very critical national security issue is now coming through, loud and clear. Joe Biden went to Europe. He addressed the G7. He met with the NATO in the Brussels headquarters. He met with the European Union to mend ties with them. But for a change, instead of Russia being the main focus of their dialogues and discussions, it was China as the primary threat. And Europe has agreed absolutely in toto that it is China which is the primary threat. So I think over a period of time, the Americans must work to decouple Russia and China. In driving them together, they have provided the Chinese a very cheap source of Russian arms. Russia is cash-strapped. It is prepared to sell weapons to any and anybody who can pay in hard cash, in hard dollars terms. And therefore, the Chinese have got a dangerous infusion of military technology, cutting-edge technology in various spheres, which was not otherwise available to them. This is a very, very dangerous development, and it would be in the American interest to possibly go slow on Russia. And I would even go to the extent of saying that the interference in their electoral process is far higher from China than it has been from the Russians. Even cyber warfare, the Chinese are going to great lengths to carry this out. But what the Chinese have done with COVID is a cause for serious, serious alarm. I'd like to just dwell a little bit on that COVID aspect. The fact of the matter is the entire Chinese biological warfare program is owned by the PLA, PLA owned, PLA led. The Wuhan Institute of Virology is run by two Major Generals, Major General Shi Zhengli and Major General Chen Wei. They are the top virologists of the PLA. Shi Zhengli is called the Bat Woman of China. She is an expert on bat coronaviruses. And Chen Wei is an expert on Ebola and MERS. He has served long in Africa, where he dealt with these epidemics. And together, Shi Zhengli has published 4 papers she had published on how to splice the SARS hook molecule onto the bat coronavirus. And then she did it in 2015 with American help. You know, the Americans were carrying out gain of function research in the United States. 2014, in Obama's time, this research was banned as far too dangerous. That if this Frankenstein virus leaks out, it would be the ultimate horror. This research was stopped in the United States. Dr. Fauci very smartly gave $3.4 billion to Peter Daszak of the Eco Health Alliance, an NGO. And Daszak paid the Wuhan Institute of Virology to carry on with this gain of function research. The fact is that the Chinese used it for their own ends to wage biological warfare against the United States itself. The defector has given indication that the Chinese had modeled the spread of the coronavirus in the United States and in other countries globally. And the simple fact is, one of the smoking guns that has come out, Dr. Swamy, is Dhru Dhazong, is an Air Force virologist of the People's Liberation Army Air Force, who runs that number 18 University of the PLA Air Force. In 2015, which is a critical year for biological warfare research in China, he had headed a series of 18 papers. He had done 24 presentations to the top Chinese leadership, including Xi Jinping. And some of the things that he had discovered were amazing. What he had discovered was, what he had put across was first a Chinese perception that the 2002 SARS virus was genetically engineered and it had been specifically used against China. So as far as the Chinese perception is concerned, they are the victims of biological warfare already. So, you know, perceptions are the drivers of action. As per the Chinese thinking, they have already been attacked by biological warfare, genetically engineered viruses. Therefore, as per the Chinese, they are fully justified in retaliating in kind. They are justified in retaliating in kind. The second part of this study was, he said that biological warfare agents can now be freeze-dried and stored for long periods of time. And then they can be very clandestinely released as part of frozen meat. You know, you can take them to the target country and aerosolize them there in some restaurant, in some lavatory. You can take them to the Dharavi slum, and that is where I think most of our infections have come from, the Dharavi slum. No country can trace it back to you, and you can destroy more or less the medical, the healthcare system of the target country, create psychological stress and trauma, have long-term lasting impact, especially on the economy. And you can bring a country to its knees without firing a shot. The Chinese have been talking for years on non-contact warfare. And in 2017, Dr. Swamy, they had made it a part of, their official military doctrine that is called the Science of Military Strategy. And they added a new chapter on biological warfare. How can they do it when they are signatory to the Biowar Convention? And last thing that I would like to say, Dr. Swamy, before I'd like to hand over the floor to you the earliest possible and learn, sir. The last thing is, India is now in a very piquant situation. We have to balance Russia, China, America. In a situation where Russia and China are being pushed together because of American foreign policy, because of the pressure, they have designated both of them as primary targets. And therefore, Russia is the prime source, has been so far, of our military technology. 70% of our cutting edge technology comes from Russia. One, the prices are cheaper. Number two, they give us things that the Americans are not prepared to give us, even for the love of money. Americans don't lease to you nuclear submarines. The Americans are not prepared to give you F-35. They haven't. They've given it to Japan, but they haven't given it to you, which we are also supposed to be Quad. So you will need the Russians. You will need the Russians because the Russians just have to sell their weapons. They have very few other sources of hard cash, oil and weapons. Oil, gas, weapons in that order perhaps. So we will need to now somehow balance. We will need to prevail upon our American friends that if they want the Quad to work, they'll have to have a single point focus. They'll have to follow the maxim of Henry Kissinger and not take on more than one major Asian power at a time. China is the main threat because China has the economic muscle to challenge the United States. With their deep pockets, China has already purchased people in the CIA, FBI, National Security, Pentagon, and a lot of other places. This is what that defector has told the Defense Intelligence Agency. And it is that which has shaken the Biden administration as to the level of the threat. But India is in a very, very difficult situation. We'll have to do a very deft diplomatic balancing act, and we will have to somehow come between. If we can build bridges between Russia and America, it will be entirely to our interest. It will be entirely to our interest. We similarly have to build bridges between Iran and the United States because the damage is being done to us. The damage is being done to us. I thank you, sir, for inviting me on this program and giving me a chance to air some of my views. I would be very keenly looking forward to your outlook on the matter.
Thank you very much, General. You put the perspective very clearly. Let me ask you some questions because I can't have a discussion with you. You know too much compared to what I know. So, so I will ask you questions to clarify. One is that we were, the Prime Minister Modi in particular, so nice to them. 18 times he met him one-to-one, Xi Jinping and Modi. Sometimes they came and swung together in the Jula. Sometimes they were wearing dhoti together in Tamil Nadu, or so on. I mean, this happened. And there were other meetings that took place on the side of an international conference. Why is it that we had no clue that China was going to come and grab territory which was mutually agreed to be Indian territory? 1993, we said, let the disputes be as they are. But for the time being, Aksai Chin will be with China then we'll draw a line of actual control, and then this part will be India, that is Ladakh. Now, they have violated it not during the case in the situation of Modi becoming Prime Minister, but even when the Congress was in power in 2013 in Depsang, the Chinese came and occupied it. And today I see in one of the media that one of the prominent leaders of Congress, Tiwari, Manoj Tiwari, I think, he has admitted that yes, but he said that we made it public, but nobody took notice. This is what he said. So the Chinese had already arrived. So when Modi took over office, I'm sure he must have been briefed that the Chinese are in illegal possession of Depsang, which is on this side of the LAC. And then after that, in May 5th and then June 15th, Galwan takes place. Yet we continue to maintain that we have not said a word against China. We haven't even named it. And we have been negotiating. Now, what could be a reason? So, I mean, I'll pose the questions and you can take it turn by turn. What could be the reasons why we do not, at the official level, perceive China as a threat to India? And you must admit that China has got companies all over our place. Even our cricket is the Chinese companies are at work. So, and all those earlier thing of banning this, this and that, it's all over, and the Chinese are in full swing today in the business aspect of India, and they are exporting and importing as before. So, could you, as a general, tell me, and with your knowledge of and your personal, and many of you, the present chiefs are the people at the top level have been your juniors. Why is it that we are reluctant to declare China as an aggressor in the Ladakh area? Number one. Number two, why is it that the Chinese, after we being so nice to them, what was their provocation? Because they have, after this, the Depsang and Galwan and all that, they have used their official controlled media like CGTN and all to really debase us. Now, does that mean that essentially the PLA calls the shots and Xi Jinping just goes along? Or Xi Jinping is a part of this to humiliate India? So this is one aspect we have to be clear, because it's fine to say, I mean, I agree with you that if we can separate the Russians and the Chinese, we're a big thing. At the moment, as the former Foreign Secretary of India and former Ambassador of India to China, Mr. Gokhale, he wrote a book in which he said, I am convinced that the Russians are now a junior partner of China. And that's because the American sanctions had made them bankrupt. So only China was in a position to give them money. And the Chinese gave them money. They are dependent on China for money. It's like Sri Lanka. After we have humiliated, our bureaucrats have humiliated Rajapaksa, he had no alternative, because the previous government of before Rajapaksa had engaged, been so indebted to China that there was no way they could pay. The government of India was not ready to write off the loans or reschedule the loans that India had given to Sri Lanka. So now he has gone over completely to the Chinese thing. He's in fact going to cede some parts as a long-term lease deed, based on a long-term lease deed. And the same thing has happened in Nepal. Nepal has been, completely taken over in the sense of influenced by China. Bhutan has now told us, don't worry about us, we know how to deal with China. And Myanmar, I mean, we are literally surrounded, a scenario which didn't exist. So when you say that Biden Putin summit meeting, we are already part of Quad, but we are also part of BRICS, and we are holding the BRICS meeting in November. Would you say that, I've lived in America for many years. The American psychology doesn't understand all these Hindu, this ye bhi theek hai, wo bhi theek hai. See, they either you're with them or you don't count. We don't care for you. So if you are in the Quad, they've given this F-35 to the Japanese, and of course earlier on they're given to Turkey, but they're taking it back. The Americans I know said we cannot give any sophisticated weapons to India, even if it's in Quad, if they accept this S-400, because the S-400 electronics is all Chinese, and we cannot risk our thing from being cannibalized by the Chinese by spying on our equipment which is with India. So, do you think that we should become entirely a part of, not a servant or a junior partner like Japan or Australia, but a genuine partner where we share in the miseries of the America? We should have done that, I think, in Afghanistan. So, how do you move from Biden's presidency, Quad, and to be able to deal with China with the help of this Quad? So what are the steps that we need to take? So I think these questions is something that makes it that we are like a in Panchatantra there's a bat. There's a story about a bat. I'm not talking about the Wuhan bat, but the Panchatantra has a story that when there was a war between the birds and the animals, the bat went to the animals and said, "See, I look like a rat. I'm a part of you, so I'm with you. So please always treat me as one of yours." Then quietly they went to the birds and said, "See, I've got wings and I fly, so I'm with you." And when the war took place, the bat was nowhere. It had gone into to relaxation, and these bird and the animals had the war, but then they decided to make peace. And then both of them said, "What happened to the bat? Where is it?" So they went hunting for him, for the bat. And the bat realized that when they find out the truth, they will probably decimate them. So that's why the bat comes out only at night and is handing upside down, so that it is camouflaging itself for fear from both animals and birds. So like that will be neither here nor there. You see, na ghar ka na ghat ka, that sort of thing that will happen. So I would say, the short question is, should India take a view? We can deal with the Chinese as far as our soldiers are concerned, but we don't lack the necessary weapons. And unless we if you go on delaying, earlier on across the LAC, the Chinese didn't have any airports, didn't have anything. We very easily went and occupied Kailash range, and then suddenly out of nobility, we decided to release it. So we withdrew from Kailash range. So do you think that there is a concrete policy on China that we have that takes into all these things? Or is there a danger that some of us are a little afraid of the Macau banking system, and which is perhaps more secret now than the Swiss banking system? What is the problem? Why we are not able to say China is an aggressor and we condemn them for what they have done and betrayal that they have done, but we will get our land back, whether it takes a little time or not, but we'll take it back. What is the hesitation in our defense or our military or our Ministry of Foreign Affairs or in our government?
Sir, may I say very, very bluntly, like a soldier, we have institutionalized cowardice in our foreign ministry. We have institutionalized cowardice in our foreign ministry. And in the Nehruvian era, firstly, Nehru started out with a great lie that we got our freedom, you know, because of soft power of ahimsa, non-violence, etc. It was a pure
That's
lie. You know it, and I know it. But then he
yeah.
institutionalized that lie by creating in the foreign ministry an instrument for, as he saw it, waging peace all over the world. So the foreign ministry always thinks in terms of waging peace, and therefore it has a conflictual or a hostile relationship with the armed forces and the Ministry of Defense, who it sees that it must somehow control, it must tame, it must hold on a leash, because it is their job to wage peace and the armed forces' job to wage war, instead of working in synergy as these two ministries work in most sovereign countries. They have been working at loggerheads. They have been involved in a kind of an exercise, infantile exercise, to prove they are the ones who call the shot, they are superior, and unfortunately they prevail time and again. 65, we had taken the Haji Pir Pass. First time, first
Yes.
shot, we gave it away at Tashkent.
Yes.
We gave it away at Tashkent. We've taken the posts on overlooking the Kargil road. We gave it away at Tashkent. We got the Kailash mountain ranges, which is that helmet top, iron top, the Rezangla, etc. Incidentally, sir, the South Pangong Tso is the main invasion route from Ladakh to
That's right.
Tibet and vice versa.
Yes,
North
yes.
Pangong
Even
Tso,
Zorawar
in
Singh.
comparison, absolutely right, you are, sir. 1841, that was the route Zorawar Singh had taken to penetrate 750 kilometers inside Tibet, fight a major battle on the banks of the Mansarovar, Kailash Mansarovar. He is the only Hindu general to have reached the Kailash Mansarovar, the holiest place of ours. That's our Vatican, more than our Vatican. So he is the only general who had fought a battle there, captured a Chinese standard called the Mandalay flag, which is still with my regiment, by the way, still with my regiment. This was the main route. In comparison, North Pangong Tso, where the tamasha was made so much of, is value is nothing in
Yes.
comparison to South Pangong Tso. We should have held on to this advantage which your armed forces gained for you at great cost. I mean, it could have blown up, it could have happened, but they gained it. This was a quid pro quo action. We'll pay you back tit for tat. And we paid them back tit for tat. We occupied the Kailash range, which incidentally overlooks the Moldo garrison. The Chinese garrison
Yeah.
of Moldo was at our feet. We just had to roll
Correct.
stones and they would have been in deep trouble.
That's right.
That is why the
That's right.
Chinese panicked. That is why the Chinese panicked. They went to the Russians and the Russians pressurized us, and the foreign ministry then said, here is their Nobel Peace Prize moment, when they will finally get the Nobel Peace Prize they have been hankering for quite some time. And frankly, I think the armed forces have been pressurized to give it up as an opening gambit, and it was then supposed to open the way for mutual disengagement at Depsang, Daulat Bay, Goldi, Hot Springs, Galwan, etc. But you do not give your ace in the opening move. Your ace was this Kailash range.
Yes.
I thought we threw it away absolutely at the start, and for what? For the North Pangong Tso? That was a joke. The Chinese grabbed this with such alacrity that before we change our mind, before we realize we have been suckered and taken for a ride, they went, dismantled all their, defenses. Yeah, go, and they were in a great hurry to get back because they wanted us off their backs in the Kailash range. Kailash range
Yes.
is ours. The 62 war was fought at Rezangla. The action of Shaitan Singh took place there. Paramveer Chakra was earned there. And we gave it away. I mean, it wasn't even contested. Why the hell
Yes.
should we have? given that away at the first go, I can't understand. And as we were anticipating, the Chinese have refused to budge, refused to discuss
Yes.
contemptuously,
Yes.
Daulat Begoldi, Depsang Plains, Hot Spring, and the other areas which we thought by our very
Right.
generous offer, which would sweep the Chinese off their feet. They took it,
Yes.
they grabbed it, and now they have made a sucker out of us. But anyway, despite that, fortunately, Indian military power is strong
Yeah.
enough there. Is strong enough there. The only thing is we have given them the chance to plug a lot of gaps. Their airfields had no shelters, bomb shelters. Their aircraft were lying out in the open. You see, we habitually have become cowards. We have become mental cowards. Our bureaucracy and all have a great amount of caution and cowardice inherent in this thing. This was the time to give China a bloody nose. We have missed a golden opportunity. The
That,
world would have, your image in the world would have been up
yeah.
there if you
Yeah.
were the one country that would have stood up to China, and we were capable of giving them a bloody nose.
That's right.
So the pity is that the Chinese army is not the army which came in 62. They haven't fought a war for 42 years. Their soldiers are princelings, single child family. He doesn't want
Yes.
to get killed. His parents don't want him to die. He comes for a 4-year conscription period. He wants to go back in one piece. This kind of a soldier will not fight. And if it comes to a hard, tough, pitched battle, they will give way. They will crack.
Yes.
So, if we know that, it was in our interest to have a kinetic action. Why did we let China impose upon us that it will only be hand-to-hand fighting? Why? What the hell have we bought these weapons? They are not meant for the Republic Day parade. When the Chinese were messing around in Galwan, we should have opened fire. I mean, why do you hesitate to open fire? Why does the foreign ministry dictate tactics? Sitting in Delhi, if they are so brave, let them go there. Let the foreign ministry mandarins take command of our battalion. If they are going to, insist that it is to be their way or the highway, that is actually not a very, very this thing. The only reason that I can think for the foreign ministry to have done, acted the way it did, the only justification that I can see is that when Biden came in, initially the response of the American administration was amazingly hostile. I mean, the Sikh, they were
Yes.
they were supporting the Sikhs. They were supporting the farmers' agitation. Kamala Harris and gang had joined in. We had Mia Khalifa and the rest of the American,
Yeah.
cartoon network joining in to put pressure. So that is the time I think there was a bit of concern that we are trying to join the Quad. But if this is the way our friends will treat us, then we might as well hedge our bets. So as it is, the ministry always errs on the side of caution. So they thought that may not be the best time to provoke the Chinese. And with a very grand gesture, they gave away the Kailash range. And as we were expecting, any soldier, foot soldier would have told you, the Chinese would happily grab the Kailash offer and give you nothing in return in the rest of the area. So we have gotten ourselves into a piquant situation. My advice to the government would be take courage in both your hands. If it comes to kinetic, give it. The Chinese have made, they have infected 3 crore people in India and killed 3 lakh Indians. That's not small change. We have never suffered so much in any war. Since independence, all wars put together, we have not taken 3 lakh casualties.
Right.
We haven't taken 3 lakh casualties. We have taken 25,480 soldiers killed in all our wars since independence. We have about 80,000 soldiers, citizens killed in the Pakistani terrorism. So that also doesn't add up. This is 2.5, 3 times more we have suffered casualties. Are we going to allow China to get away with it? The answer is to go kinetic. It is
Yeah.
the foreign ministry which prevails upon our prime minister to go in for personalized diplomacy.
Yeah.
It is very flattering to say, sir, that you have the persona, the charisma, you can charm the pants off anyone, and let's then go in for that kind of a charismatic one-to-one kind of a this thing. Uh, leadership to leadership, bon homie, goes to a certain extent. It cannot, it cannot overcome or outweigh
Yeah.
deeply
Yeah.
entrenched national interests. The Chinese are hard-nosed. They are quite capable of negotiating for decades, for centuries, and not give you a damn.
That's
They
right.
have been dragging out these negotiations. They haven't given an inch. The good thing is we also haven't given them what they wanted. But to get carried away by the pressure of the foreign ministry, ki, sir, you have the personal equation now, and you have charmed him. Your charisma has worked on him, and now we will get a deal. I'm afraid we did not get. So let's
That's right.
learn our lesson. Let's learn our lessons, at least go from there. The problem is we don't learn from our history, sir. We repeat the same thing. Nehru also thought by his charisma he would
Yeah.
get a very good deal out of the Chinese. We all know the way they humiliated. So why are we
we
asking for a repetition?
we gave up
Why
our
are we
UN
asking?
Security Council. We gave up our UN Security Council seat.
Security Council seat for the Chinese. I mean, that is the most amazing piece of, sacrifice of hard-nosed national interest or,
Yes.
grandiloquent dreams of personalized
Yeah.
diplomacy, very personalized. I'm
Right.
sorry, personal relations only go so far. In
That's right.
country to country relationships,
Right.
we have to be hard-nosed. We have to be hard-nosed.
Even
And,
when yes. Yes,
sir,
even when Biden met Putin, he had his Secretary of State, and Putin had his foreign minister. They sat and took notes. There never has
that,
been a one-to-one, with nobody around and no notes taken,
that,
no tape
no,
recording. Because I
absolutely.
asked the government, please produce a white paper on all the 18 meetings that took place. They said we have no records.
So, sir, that is unfortunate. Every prime minister who comes, and especially if a prime minister is doing well, it doesn't take very long for our foreign ministry to flatter him
Yeah,
and tell him to
yeah,
go for personalized diplomacy.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
sorry they take the prime ministers up the garden path. I'm very
Yes,
sorry to
that's
say.
right. Yes.
They take the prime
Uh,
ministers up the garden path.
my
And that's
my
what has happened. I mean,
excellent.
if we
Yeah.
we go by results, in the armed forces,
Yes.
we go by what worked, what
Yeah.
happened on ground, what are the results. The results
Yes.
speak for themselves.
Yes,
Results
that's
speak
right.
for themselves. My honest advice would be your armed forces can give it back now. But if you
Right.
let the differential between us and China widen, you
Yeah.
see, we have fortunately caught up quite a bit. We had great amount of advantages because the Chinese were not looking for a war this side. They are
Yeah.
focused
That's
on
right.
the Pacific coast. They are
That's
focused
right.
on the Pacific coast. We have given them time to now plug most of the gaps. So before they plug all of them, I think we might as well have a kinetic engagement, bloody their nose a bit, because we can do it. Just have
Yes.
the courage. Just have
Yeah.
the courage, and we
Right.
can live with the consequences.
Right.
At least you will be one side. You will be very
That's right.
clear. Even the
Right.
Russians are worried about the Chinese. The
I
Chinese are claiming
know.
Vladivostok. The
Yes.
Chinese are
That's
claiming
right.
Vladivostok. They are claiming the Russian Far East. Even the
That's
Russians
right.
are worried about the Chinese. And they would
That's
be
right.
secretly very happy if you give them a
Yes.
bloody nose.
Yes. That's right.
If you give them a bloody nose.
Yeah.
We can and we
Ma-
should. We gave it in 1967. We had peace for about 40 years.
Yes, that's right. In
Till
Nathula Pass,
Nathola.
19.
And we had a general, sir. We had General Sagat Singh, who was one
Uh,
of the best field commanders of the Bangladesh war. You know, when Sagat Singh took charge in Kashmir, he said, any chap who refuses to open fire and who gets into this gutham gutha with the Chinese and wrestling matches, and I will court-martial that guy. That's not the way armies are supposed to fight. They have been given weapons so that they can use them. Why should the Chinese call the shots always? Why should they dictate how our soldiers will fight?
That's right.
It's our choice. We will fight the way we like. We will fight the way that gives us advantage. We'll fight like soldiers. We fight the foreign ministry way. Do you know that NIFA then, Arunachal Pradesh now, was under the control of the foreign ministry for quite a few years after independence. The foreign ministry was guarding our borders. We should not get back to that same arrangement because it is in real politics terms ridiculous. Ridiculous. We can't get that.
My colleagues want to also ask you some questions. So over to Jagdish. Which of the three of you would like to ask a question?
Arvind?
Thank you, General Bakshi and Dr. Swamy, for giving such a nice description of the relationship between US, Russia, and China and the latest developments. My question is to both of you. How serious do you think this initiative on the part of Biden to meet Vladimir Putin? Not very long ago, only in March this year, Vladimir Putin was described as a killer by Biden and said that since he was interfering in the US elections and he was blaming everything. And then the same thing was for China. Blow hot and blow cold relationship between US and China, right from the starting of the coronavirus, whether it was Trump or if it was Biden. Earlier, there was some initiative, then there were gullies given to China, and then some modification done and some softness shown. So how serious do you think this relationship is? Because this meeting was supposed to last for 2 sittings and about 4 to 5 hours, but ended in the first sitting itself with about half of the time which was initially expected they will spend together.
Yes, sir. This only Bakshi can answer, General.
You're talking of the meeting between Biden and Putin, right? You know, like I said, a democratic dispensation has generally been soft to China. In Obama's time, he was almost thinking of the two of us can manage the world, we can have our spheres of influence. And therefore, he was very reluctant to engage in Asia. And then they found that they had been taken for a ride. You know, and China was, when Philippines took the South China Sea dispute to the International Court of Justice, China and the International Court of Justice ruled against China. China treated that with contempt. And all the smaller nations of Southeast Asia were worried sick because they felt that the Americans had abandoned them. It was then that Obama came with that kind of a rebalancing towards Asia. That was the first, step. And that had come halfway down the Obama administration when they realized that they had gone wrong. That is why, when Donald Trump came, he came with a very clear-cut notion that the Chinese were the main threat, the Chinese were the main problem, and he dealt with it with great clarity. You know, he did what he had to do in Hong Kong, in Xinjiang, in Tibet, wherever. In Taiwan, he armed Taiwan, and he made the Quad, and then he engaged China in a trade war. He had them under pressure. And I think the Chinese were panicked by that pressure into using the biowarfare weapon. They did it, through a staged accident. Let me give you a piece of history. You know how the Second World War started? 1939, the Germans on the Polish border attacked one of their own posts, staged an attack on one of their own posts at Dresden. And they started the Second World War. The Japanese started the invasion of China by the Mukden incident. Those who have long memories will remember that. Mukden was a Japanese post The Japanese staged an attack on their own post in Chinese uniform and used that as a pretext to attack China. So, world wars have started with staged attacks. So, my simple thesis is, I have written an article in the Indian Military Review, Wuhan, accidental release or staged accident. Accidental release or staged accident. Because World War II started with staged tamashas. So was this, release of the virus a staged tamasha? All circumstantial evidence strongly points towards that. And now this defector, if that story is true, the highest ranking Chinese defector reached the United States in February. They are still analyzing the data that he has got out. If that is true, then he has said that this is a biological warfare attack. And that is what has caused the change in the Biden administration outlook. Change in the Biden administration outlook. But it hasn't yet gone deep enough to affect the deep state. You know, the CIA, the American military, traditionally they see Russia as their only military rival. And, it's like, Indian army versus the Chinese army. We would like to see China as our main rival. And any talk of, sucking up to China, climbing down, etc., would be anathema to the Indian military. So I suppose it's the same kind of a military pride at work in the United States, which is not allowing thaw or modus vivendi or any attempt to break the Russian-Chinese quasi-alliance, which is being cemented.
We are running.
That is why
we're running out of time. We're running out of time. Any of you? I mean, Ramesh.
Okay, Ramesh, go ahead.
Yeah, General Bakshi, the question is, this dilly-dallying in decision making, how is it having an impact on, I mean, I'm pretty sure the soldiers in the field, is there going to be a significant impact on their morale? Or, I mean, how do they perceive this dilly-dallying? Because they're ready to fight, based on what you've been saying in different channels, even here today. But is it affecting the morale of the people?
The morale of the armed forces, fortunately, we have a peasant army. They are villagers. And it takes a lot to, I would say, make a dent in the morale of the Indian armed forces. It takes hell of a lot. And the simple fact is that, you see, in the mountains, you require the foot infantry. The Chinese have mechanized their entire formation. Last year,
No, go ahead. We can hear you.
We can hear you. It's fine. The picture is still
there. We can hear you.
Yeah. Something went wrong, Dr. Swamy. We lost him.
Okay.
We can, Jagdi, Arvindji, we can conclude.
No, 1 minute. Let us.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry.
Okay,
Arvind, I think we have lost contact.
Go
Dr.
ahead.
Swamy, any comment you want to make before we wind up?
No. I have nothing more to add.
Arvind, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Swamy. Thank you, Major General G.D. Bakshi. We lost the connection. Otherwise, you were just to answer a few more questions. And since you are running out of time, maybe it will take time for you to get reconnected. And therefore, we are concluding the program. And some other time, we'll invite you. Thank you, Dr. Swamy. I mean, this issue, as General Bakshi had mentioned about Dr. Henry Kissinger's quote, saying that the US wants to take only one rival at a time, one Asian power as a rival at a time. So maybe they want to take Chinese first, and therefore they are making up with Russia. Maybe this is the strategy. And the book which he has written will also reveal a lot of secret information once it is released in the domain. Thank you, Dr. Swamy. Thank you, Jagdish Shetty. Thank you, Ramesh Swamy. And I thank my technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Tejas, Swaminathan, Gadgi Rakesh, Ishwar Iyer, and Vishal Mehta. We will be meeting again on Saturday in the last episode, perhaps last episode of the Earth Gyan Ganga, and discuss the third part of Indian-China comparison on and growth, and then again next Sunday. Till then, viewers, thank you very much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.